the girl married a stranger for a promise. On the very day, she was kicked out by him, but she secretly ran back. However, her mother-in-law burned all her belongings. The girl risked everything to grab a photo. It was a memorial picture of her mother. The girl was heartbroken, but she couldn't leave because it was a promise she made to someone. Her name is Annie. She grew up in a single-parent family. Her mother had passed away not long ago. Now, Annie lives alone in the countryside. Until one day, her wealthy uncle found her. He hoped that Annie would marry his son, Al. Annie firmly refused because she never wanted to get married, let alone marry someone she had never met. But her uncle said he had cancer. He didn't have much time left. His only wish was to find a good wife for his son, and Annie was the best choice. Annie knew her uncle didn't have much time. She felt deeply sorrowful because her uncle had always been very kind to their family. You could say he had been a great benefactor. To avoid disappointing her uncle and to repay his kindness, the kind-hearted Annie took it as a promise. She silently swore in her heart that she would be a good wife. But on the very first day in the house, she was met with disdain from her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law didn't think much of this countryside daughter-in-law. Her ideal daughter-in-law was a rich girl who had a crush on Al because the rich girl's family was very powerful in the area. The old lady promised the rich girl that she would make her daughter-in-law. That way, her position in the wealthy circle would rise. On the surface, the old lady followed her husband's wishes, but secretly, she used every trick to try to drive Annie away. First, she ordered the servants to burn all the luggage Annie had brought. Then, she made Annie work with the servants. The servants also looked down on Annie, who came from the countryside. The servant deliberately threw a plate at Annie. The plate fell and shattered on the floor. The old lady rushed over when she heard the sound. The servant immediately blamed Annie. The old lady angrily scolded Annie. "Do you know how much this plate is worth? You'll never be able to afford this plate in your life." Annie was so hurt, she couldn't speak. The old lady ordered Annie to clean up the pieces quickly. Guests were coming soon. Annie silently squatted down to pick up the pieces. The mother-in-law kept urging her from the side. In her hurry, Annie accidentally cut her hand. At that moment, her fiancé came back. Al quickly helped Annie treat her wound. At this point, he still didn't know that this poor girl was his wife. When he found out that his father wanted to marry Annie off to him, Al immediately had a heated argument with his father. He told his father he didn't want to get married, and he would never marry a stranger. His father, however, said, "I guarantee you'll fall in love eventually. Only after you settle down will you learn to grow up." Reluctantly, he found Annie again. He asked her why she agreed to marry him. To him, Annie must have been after their money. Al certainly couldn't let this scheming woman succeed. So, he secretly drove Annie away behind his father's back. Then, he gave her a large sum of money and told her to go back to her countryside home. Annie had never faced such humiliation, but in order to keep her promise to her uncle, she chose to silently endure. When Al happily returned home, he found the money had been returned to him, unopened. Al quickly looked out the window. This woman actually came back. Al suddenly couldn't figure her out anymore. She didn't want the money, so why, after only meeting once, was she willing to marry him? That day, Al suddenly went to his father. He told him he was willing to marry Annie.